welcome to the Three Beards podcast. My name is Craig, along with Austin and Chris.
Passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century.
Let me out.
I'm afraid that is quite impossible.
Then live to send the innocent to their death? Is this justice and honor in Massachusetts colony?
Welcome to the Three Beards podcast. My name is Austin. We have Mark Eddy, Chris, and Mr. Alex tonight. Craig is unfortunately sick, but he is here on commenting, so have a good night tonight.
All right.
We are still three birds. Huh? Three birds.
We're trying to get Mark Eddy to have a beard. He's going to get one, or we'll send him a fake one soon. So. Oh, man.
All right. So, we have a great two shows lined up for this evening. First up is Alex Chionetti. He is an explorer, and he rediscovered two Andean cities.
Wow.
He was a consulting producer for Ancient Aliens. He recently published a book on his search for Ecuador's legendary Teos Cave.
Wow.
Great book.
Yeah.
Let's see. And you can get a copy of the book from Inner Traditions, Amazon, and where other from other reputable booksellers.
Yeah, Simon & Schuster is in Simon & Schuster webpage. So. And Simon & Schuster audio. So it's an audio book.
On the Simon & Schuster webpage too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. And all right, so Alex, how are you?
Very good. I just have an accident. I fall in my nose, but I am okay. With two wounds in my knees, walking. I said it's more dangerous to walk in the streets of New Jersey than in the jungle of Amazon.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I am suffering. I'm suffering.
So if you want to jump right in on how to discover the lost cities, that would be very interesting. I did a little research on the lost cities that you discovered. So
I'm glad you asked me, but they never asked me about that two things in my resume, in my curriculum about the two cities. I discovered in the last 15 years, in my travels through Peru, no Ecuador, through a place called the Valley of Santa Eulalia, where is a place called the Plateau of Marcahuasi, which I had been researching since the 80s, the early 80s, almost kind of 40 years in the making. I discovered kind of two cities, but were never really recorded in the historical archaeological books of the official Peruvian archaeology. And following the steps of one of my mentors, Jean Savoy, I started to discover when the cities are rediscovered after I was there by the official archaeology. But I have proofs of my discovery. One of them, I will not name the location, is a fantastic pre-Inca city. And in the first, I follow the legend of a kind of a bell, a haunting bell. Of the legend was telling about a tower, a kind of and the sounds of a bell and a lost treasure of the Spaniards, which was hidden in the base of this kind of platform. But when I did the first, following the my friends from a near village, this we are talking about the kind of 5,000, 6,000 feet over the level of the sea. No?
Wow.
And it's high. It's the Sierra. It's the high Sierra of the Andes. And many cultures. It was a melting pot of many cultures, pre-Incas, after uh, the 16, 1500. But before we could talk about a period of 2,000 years ago, there were kind of these small villages. And in this town, follow the legend, when I get there, I didn't find a bell. I didn't find a tower. I was thinking I was going to find a kind of colonial, pre-Hispanic kind of church, but no, was a natural formation with the shape of an obelisk, and it was a plateau. And was nothing there. And in that first expedition, it was 15 years ago. I had to back to Lima, and I couldn't stay. And I always was in my kind of shopping list of explorer back to the place. And in 2007, 2008, I back to the place and I explored, and I found a kind of an underground structure, underground graves. And the funny thing is, I found these kind of elongated skulls, the famous skulls we have been seeing and in the last few years about the deformation, the occipital trepanation and deformation. I had to descend through a chamber who was kind of semi-subterranean, and I had to use a cord to descend myself, but was not visible from outside. And either the Incas and the pre-Incas, as the Chachapoyas, for example, they used to build their kind of funerary niches, funerary kind of dwellings in the naked rock. And for descent to that, if it's not covered by the forest, you have to really descend in a kind of a rappel through a string. But the funny thing is, outside you didn't see anything, and I couldn't penetrate some of the part where was the narrow, the holes to access were very covered, and I left it there. I hope it's still intact. I'm planning to back. I was thinking maybe I could buy this land if the
So,
locals kind
so
of
technically,
allow me to. Yeah.
so the land that you discovered, what democracy is it under? Is it under like the Spaniards, or who owns stake of that land? Since you discovered it, do you have stake of that land, or that land is just lost land that
No,
is
no,
out?
it's a private land. It's a family. But in the
Ah,
past, no, in the past was Indian. The Spaniards never passed through this place. Thanks God, it's kind of untouchable. And the second city, but well, I have the theories. All these plateaus have tunnels connected, interconnecting sacred place, religious place, and normal dwellings of families. But toward the coast, one of the locals, he invited me and said, "I'm going to bring you to a city was never recorded." And this city that really didn't have a name, was not in the atlas, the historical or archaeological atlas of the Institute of Culture of Peru in that time. And now it's called the Secretary of Minister of Culture. And when I went to the place, I was also expecting to find kind of mummies and access to more underground dwellings, but I only find very very kind of sophisticated, very old terraces. Uh, and this was more in the edge of pre-Inca and Inca culture. And was dedicated to the god of the regions called the god Gualalo. This Gualalo is a kind of the god of thunder and god of life. And in some representation, have a shape of a bird, and that was very interesting. That city was very difficult to access, but you have to really climb and descend and climb in these very very treacherous valleys. No, but finally we make it. And we celebrated drinking alcohol, drinking kind of chicha, and, and drinking pisco in the honor of the god Walalo. No? And but I was expecting to find more kind of evidence of human life, but the the native who bring me the dweller, the towner who brought me to the place, he said in the past there were, but unfortunately in these areas the people make a lot of destructions when they found funerary uh, kind of human rest, skeletons,
So,
or, or burial place, Yeah.
so on your next trip, do you plan to use any like robotics or any drone aids to research it? Or since you have to climb so far, do you plan on using like any drones to get places where you can't get?
No, it's a kind of two drones. It's not necessary. It's more interesting. I know a fellow lady. I think her name is Parchak. She's doing a lot of satellites, archaeological satellite work, and she give access to many other researchers of her kind of shots. Well, she's working more in Egypt, but she canvas all the work. Now, unfortunately, the old generation of explorers and a young one in between, yeah, is less romantic. Now, no more machetes, no more persecuted by Indians in the runaway. O sea, the signs of Indiana Jones are fading, and everything is from the air now. Since the discovery of the city, the White City, by my friend Steve Elkins, who is a good friend who had been also in the intermediate generation researching these sites, what was a legend too. And in 2016, finally he discovered this city after he searched for 30 years. But through his expeditions through the ground, he couldn't get. But using the LiDAR, with the scan, you could see the laser scan from the air. Who now everyone is use that. The universities, the treasure hunters, kind of the uh, anyone who is interested to find something from the air. And now it's amazing as in the last few years, all the big cities we found in the Americas. In the time of the expedition of Steve, what I was involved in the first stages, uh, was not the use of the LiDAR to penetrate the canvas, the canopy of the forest. But now, after him, we have so much thousands of millions of cities in Guatemala, in Mexico, in Honduras, in Belize, in Egypt, in South America, everywhere everything is the population, the the population bomb, the higher population of the human species is nothing new. It's nothing new. But right in the 5,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, was a lot of population in the Nile, in the valley, the valley of the Nile, the Nile, the Nile. And in South America, all the coasts of next to the Pacific, of the coast of Colombia, the coast of Ecuador, the coast of Peru and Chile, they have millions of inhabitants, and they left many a lot of constructions that are still buried in the sand. Yeah, it's very similar. No matter what, it's the cultures in America. What is my subject? There are so old as the cultures in Egypt. Yeah, if we are now coming back to 10, 12,000 years ago.
Oh wow.
And
Yeah.
we are kind of challenging the official archaeology again. And we are heretics and just following the steps of Graham Hancock. Graham Hancock is the one who started to talk in the mass media about the mother culture, and he published my article. I was author of the month in February, in this past February, for his website. And so the people interested in these subjects, they should access the Graham Hancock website. I wrote a very extended article on the Tajos mystery, where we are going to talk in the next
So do you
segment.
believe? So do you believe that there's any artifacts that you all didn't locate yet on your visit, as far as mummies or maybe buried or anything of that effect? Do you believe that there is artifacts there that you all just didn't stumble on this time
No,
around?
no, yeah, it's well, that was Peru. But Peru connected my expeditions to the plateau of Marcahuasi, who is 3 square kilometers, is 1.5 miles of kind of a granitical plateau where you could find hundreds of figures, sculptures. These sculptures change the shape through the light. There are rock sculptures, look like the natural rock was enhanced, was modified to give shapes of animals and humans and extincted species, endangered lost species, and also culture from other countries as Egypt and Mesopotamia, founded in the Peruvian Andes in 10,000 feet over the level of the sea. And we cannot explain about this, but the person who discovered, the researcher who also was my friend and mentor, Daniel Russo, he said in the center of the plateau, as in many other parts in the Andes, there are concentration of lost libraries. These lost libraries made in scrolls, made in metal, and that will be connect with my research of the Tajos Caves Lost Metal Library, which I researched for more than 30 years. And it's in the next kind of interesting Amazonian Andean country as is Ecuador, no? In the jungle of Ecuador. And but these cultures left inside of the earth, in the high on the mountains and deep on the earth, libraries to preserve lost life, lost knowledge, lost kind of information. And I did also an expedition to this plateau that was kind of 17 years ago, and where we found some kind of royal tomb. They call the royal tomb what is the shape of the bricks, the shape of the construction, supposed to give evidence of some important character was buried. And I did also, it's in a crack on the air. You have to descend with cords. Unfortunately, we have a landslide later, and now that all the work we did for several years is lost. But the legend said they used to do sacrifice in this pit and throw. And the people who fall, sometimes the people who survive after they were thrown through this abyss, they show up in the foot of the plateau, couple thousand feet below, no? And they really tell the story. We survived the sacrifice. In that time, we are talking about the Spaniard colony, no? And I did an analysis of the bones, and they represent the 15th century, 16th century, no, of our age, and that means they were sacrificed. But in this kind of inner kind of Samsung construction, supposed to be scrolls. As you remember, the Dead Sea Scrolls in in between Israel and the Jordan, nobody expects we were going to find this kind of scrolls with all the information of biblical and pre-biblical times. No, my theory is also following the legends. We have this kind of lost knowledge still to be founded, kind of inside of the earth and also in the top of the mountains. In the case of the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the Dead Sea, it's was really a miracle found by a shepherd who was following his kind of sheep and found this kind of ceramic kind of vessel with parchments inside, no? And the parchments are thousands of thousands, giving evidence not only the existence of Christ but many characters in the Old Testament. No? And something fascinating for me. So I have been having the hope we are going to find some kind of new places, and that is when I start with the Tajos Caves. I was following the exploration of a friend of mine, who in 1960s, in a small expedition financed by the Mormon Church.
Huh.
The Mormon Church always was looking evidence of their history, no?
Yeah.
And the Mormon Church also create their own religions around the metal kind of scrolls, which were appears in the earth through an angelic intervention of the angel Moroni, who contacts Joseph Smith in upstate New York, and this was the genesis of the Mormon Church, of the Church of the Last Saints. And in these scrolls, they talk about advanced cultures in the Americas before Christ, before the biblical times. That connects with the Tajos Caves. My friend was the sidekick of another explorer named Morix, Janos Morix, who is also one of the characters of my book. As he discovered two things. He discovered a kind of an underground city in a cave called the Caves of Quangos. Cave of Quangos is famous for a big expedition suddenly produced in a few months by curious engineer Stanley Hall, who was reading a book from Erich von Däniken. Erich von Däniken wrote a book who was a bestseller called The Gold of the Gods. And no matter Erich von Däniken never been in the original caves, he kind of embellished the story based in the photos provided with this Morix, who discovered this very deep cave with very sophisticated, non-natural but enhancing geological features. These geological features show up. They show you, when you see it, a very similar to brick walls, very polished tunnels, ducts, and gates, and connecting with the technique used by the Incas and pre-Incas in the surface, the constructions of these massive blocks which weigh thousands of tons, and they are encastrate. They fix each together with millimeter of precision. Something we find along the valley of the Incas, as you see from Machu Picchu to Vilcabamba, uh, through Pisac, Ollantaytambo, and many other ones. And that we cannot reproduce today that technology. Morix and Julio and the expedition of 1976 of Neil Armstrong. Neil Armstrong was part, our astronaut, our first man on the moon,
Yeah.
was the first American in the decade. I was the second, but Neil, or the third, but Neil was the first. Our first on moon was the first American to step in the Tajo's cave. And you could see in the internet a lot of rumors why he was Mormon, he was Mason, he was a kind of a good boy from Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio,
Oh.
and he was kind of the godfather of that expedition. But in that time, he was from a Scottish origin, and the organizer of the expedition was Scottish. Said, "I'm going to invite some celebrity who is a Scottish too," and God save the Scots, no. but this expedition really didn't find anything. The the bigger expedition in history was a co-production between the British, the Scottish, and the Ecuadorian government at that time, and the target was take over what the Mormons couldn't take in 1968. That was the treasure of the Golden Scroll. And since then was a lot of kind of hypotheses, theories. That is the reason the cave had been turning into the more important mystery cave in the history. I brought the subject in the 80s to the United States. I was the first one. I could say it, but I could prove it. And in my book, I have a chronology of my intents to bring these subjects to get attention to the topic. I remember I have to deal with all the dummies of National Geographic then, where they don't have any kind of clue what is real exploration. And now Disney is owning National Geographic. So watch out with the ears of Mickey Mouse. Right, but talking about that, the cave was the first research methodological was in the 70s after the discovery of my two friends, Morix and Julio, in the 60s. But for me, in my expedition, was trying to find more evidence of the artificial influence in the construction of the underground city, and also the second stage was have more clues. But the Golden Library was never really see the light of the day. There are many rumors saying the British expedition took it with boxes. Now it's in the British Museum. I call the British Museum by this. They never answer me. That is very suspicious kind of thing. Unfortunately, Stanley Hall passed away in 2008. Before dying, he traced another theory saying the lost treasure, the lost library was not in that Quangos cave, but in another cave. But I went and I did two expeditions. What's interesting, this cave is kind of carved by the penetration of the river, the Pastaza River, which is a very kind of rapid, very tumultuous river who burn the Andes and connect with the Amazon. And in this cave, he said he was sure was more evidence, but I didn't find the physical evidence, but I found kind of incrustation, rectangular shapes with covered with gold. For me, it's gold. I couldn't take samples of the cover of the ceiling of the cave, but I didn't. In that time, the drones didn't exist. That was 10 years ago, and also was impossible to take a sample with that. I don't know if they exist drones who take samples of material, of rock materials, but they were in these cathedral ceilings of the cave. But through the camera, through the zoom of the camera, the video camera, I couldn't see was kind of some geometrical figures. And I thought maybe the legend of the Golden Scrolls have a kind of connection with these incrustations. But we have another story. When von Daniken went uh, to interview Morix and his lawyer in the mid 60s or late 60s, right? He also went to visit this collection they call the Father Crespi Museum. No, Father Crespi was a Salesian priest who was a total genius, very humble, almost in the way to sainthood. But he was a filmmaker too. He made his first films on the jibaros. The jibaros were the guy who shrunk your head and make it very small. And now that nation, they are called the Shuars, who are very wild as the original jibaros from the Hollywood movies, right? And I will not tell the story about my escapes and chasing the jungle as Indy Jones, but that will require a lot of description. But you could read the narrative in my book, and it will be fun. It
So
was not fun in that moment, but was
So when you
it's in,
took this, when you
yes,
presented, not to cut you off, when you presented this effort, we had a question from a guest, from our host. When you presented this evidence to the Smithsonian, did
yes.
they give you any resistance, or did they just go along with it, or how did that go?
Uh, I brought the subject to the Smithsonian uh, years ago. I was connected also with my research on the Valley of Santa Eulalia and that analysis I told you about that sacrificial pit. And the Smithsonian was very interesting. But I have a friend, a Peruvian friend, who was the curator, and he supports. And he also wrote a special letter what I brought to National Geographic Expedition Council. And with that I have to deal with the cookie cutters, the usual cookie cutters in these institutions. With the say, well, no, but nobody knows the that cave you're talking, the Tajos cave. Say, but you're supposed to explore your world. You have to explore new things. Not go to Carlsbad and go to the the caves of Altamira or something. But I don't know. That is the problem with media. And at that time, the council of the expedition was subordinated, but Fox Networks was owning part 51% of National Geographic, and they said, "Oh, the project has to be visual first for television and after the expedition." No, I said, "Let's do." No matter I am filmmaker and documentary filmmaker, I said first explorer. You have to explore first. Second, the documentary, and they ignore me. But the Smithsonian was interesting. Knowing the Smithsonian is very kind of a skeptic of any kind of different fringe type of archaeology, as happened with the crystal skulls, who they were really they rejected with the subject of the giant skulls. We have we have a lot of evidence of giant specimens in South America in this area, especially in Ecuador. We have valleys with I have testimony of people who saw these bones and these skulls bigger as a truck wheel. And that I believe in these people. They have nothing to sell, nothing to lose. And but the evidence sometimes disappear. Photos disappear, recordings disappear, bones are scattered to four directions, and
I,
yeah,
I,
etc. But Yeah, it's unfortunately the Smithsonian didn't really help. They used to help with expeditions in the past, but the war is full of very of strange bureaucracies. Yeah.
Yeah, Alex, I have a question. I'd like to preface it by a statement you make in your book. Ecuador was and is the center of the planet, and it has been the cultural center of our planet since uncharted times. And you were talking about, you just mentioned the crystal skulls and giants and elongated skulls. All this LiDAR is being used now in Central and South America, and it's uh, revealing these huge cities and ceremonial complexes. You said earlier that it's almost rivaling the uh, you know, great necropolises and cities found in the Nile Valley. Um, w- was Ecuador one of those kind of did Ecuador have like one of those Renaissance type educational attractions that was bringing people from around the world to it? You do mention some a- Asian uh, cultures crossing the Pacific to
Mhm. Yeah.
come to uh, South America. I thought that was very interesting. But when you watch Ancient Aliens, we've had some other people on the Three Beards. They're talking, discovering the same types of things you're talking about.
Well, with Ecuador, it's interesting. Ecuador, Mark, that country have the Equatorial line, who divide
Hmm.
the the war, the southern and northern hemispheres. And the interesting things, the French measuring the earth in the 17th century, uh, they thought they were kind of they they hit the jackpot and they measure with perfection. The interesting things, the area of Quito, where was the measurement of the half of the war, was a culture called the Quitus Caras. Was a very Andean culture who also they were very masters of carving the gold, no, and using underground burial places, and the Quitus Caras, they have this kind of very advanced knowledge of the stars and the movements of the earth and the sun, solstice and equinoxes. And they left construction of their measurements in form of circles and pyramids, pyramidal structures, trunked pyramids, and oriented to stars of the Ursa's Major, Ursa's Minor, the Pleiades, and with sophisticated lines. And the Andeans were very experts connecting, carving lines in mud, in sand, as we could talk hours about the Nazca lines. And in the present time, I'm working in a big project which going to decode finally the Nazca lines with a team of Spaniards and Peruvian researchers. You could see it online if you check my sites. But coming back to the Quitus Caras, they kind of they trace in the very close to the center of the war, 10 kilometers. 5 miles was already the real with real precision the measure of the war. Today, with all the advanced calculations, the scientists corroborate that not the French mission was right, but the Kitus Caras were right in the spot, and the French were 10 degrees wrong. How we explain all this knowledge? And this knowledge come from the original land, but also, as you were talking, they were migratory forces in the last 10,000 years, and the Chinese and the Japanese, they navigate and they landed in the Valdivia coast of Ecuador. How we know that? We found the same traditions and the same kind of artcraft elements we found in the Orient, for example, and we find also in other cultures in Egypt. They use the kind of the holding heads as they sleep with this kind of curved type of pillow, make of wood, make of stone, make of cooked mud, and was used all for uh, the Gon culture of Japan, as also the Valdivia culture. And that we are talking about 3,000 years ago. And also we found, for example, I went to see this burial place in this place called Valdivia in the coast of northwest of Guayaquil, where you found these people buried in lotus position as a kind of, as you see the Buddhist priests and the Orientals, they were buried in this lotus with the crossing leg. And in the hands, they have beads. They have the rosary beads used in Tibet and Himalayas in the coast of Ecuador. That proof that is an evidence of the interconnection. No, as for example, that was the research of my friend Jean Savoy, who was trying to find similarities between the cultures of the Incas, the Peruvians, and the Aztec Mexicans. For that reason, he did this great expedition called the Feather Serpent raft. It was a raft made of the totora weeds. The totora is this type of vessels made with this kind of lake and river weeds, and you construct this type of canoes, this type of kind of kayaks, giant kayaks, and Savoy decided to prove if the Incas and pre-Incas navigate north using the current to get to Mexico. And he did it. He did it, but he didn't really. He arrived to the Panama shores, but he couldn't make it to the Mexican. But in that expedition, he found many similarities between the using of the, for example, the X using the kind of chevrons, the chevron symbol, the kind of ondulatory type of crooked line and three lines, and many other symbols, and some similarities with the yeah, with the ceramics and costumes and other elements. But the archaeology didn't accept his theory, and in the time, still we think the population of America came through the Bering Strait. So now many more regionalistic researchers, Amerindians researchers, they start to think was not through the Bering, was through many ways, through the Atlantic and through the Pacific, and that is, and Ecuador had been always in the middle, and Ecuador is a kind of the melting pot of cultures who were coming from the Pacific, going to the east, as well coming from the Amazon Cuenca, Orinoco, and Amazon River toward the west. How we prove that this kind of transition and this kind of migrating pilgrimage, I call sacred pilgrimage, following the seasons
That's a good
of the
term.
sun, seasons of the planet. No, for example, inside of the cave of Tajos, coming back to this cave explored by Neil Armstrong in '76, was a burial place, and this place is no access. Was a mystery how this character was living underground, and it was only one skeleton who was found. I couldn't find the evidence of the skeleton in the museum of the university in Quito, but I found elements in display of metals and ceramics who were part of this character, this Indian, who may be fall in the cave, but the drop to the cave is kind of 80 meters, it's very old. Maybe he descends through some weeds or some kind of a special mystery, but inside of this burial site, we found spondylus. Spondylus is this special shell who only you could find in the Pacific waters. It's kind of it's a shell with pink color, and that was very venerated as so important as to have a Rolex today. You could have your spondylus in your kind of in your house or in your cave.
Yeah.
And that proved in the middle of the between in this cartography of the vast Andes, some group crossed the Andes, and the Andes is big altitude. You have to cross coming from the west to show up in the eyebrow of the jungle. The eyebrow of the jungle where we found the cave of Tajos and other sites. That's it. The people were very 3,000, 2,000. They were always in constant movement. And we have navigations. We have evidence. As I always said, Christopher Columbus was the last one. But we found evidence of the Phoenicians in Bolivia. We have this kind of ceramic type of clay plate with very Mesopotamian inscriptions. It's not a hoax, it's a real one which show up near the Titicaca Lake. And how they get there with all these Semitical characters. No? And as well, we have more toward Argentina, we have influence of the Middle East, of type of writings similar to Israeli Hebrew language, inscriptions from a couple thousand years ago. That's it. The Europe and the Middle East and the Far East, they have navigators. They have very advanced navigators and vessels. Yeah, to come. We have that, and also we have the guys from the other places who have been landing too.
The ETs.
Call it as ETs or kind of UIPs now. UIPs. WAPs.
Alex, Austin has a few of your photos that we could put on the screen, and maybe you could give the viewers an explanation from where you took these photos, the importance of some of the features in there. Austin, can you get?
There's one.
Okay, there we go.
And these photos, I was visiting the place where was the planetary of my old friend and mentor, Dr. Allen Hynek. It's in Chicago.
Oh.
Yeah. The Dearborn. And before he was director of the Blue Book, Heineck was a peaceful astronomer, interested interested in also satellites and astrophysics, and this was his office. Yeah,
Oh wow.
he was professor of astronomy of Northwestern University. That is part of the campus.
Wow.
This is part of my happy times in Mount Shasta and Northern California.
It's pretty.
Near Redding is the secret, the beginning of the ascent to the controversial Mount Shasta and its lemurs inside the subterranean lemurs, no? Lemurians. This is a photo of the expedition of 1969 called Taltosoc Barlanga with Morix, where the guy in the photo is what was his no I forgot his name, but he was part of the director of the Equatorian tourists. Gaston Fernandez. Gaston. I- this is the first photo of the Polish tunnels in the Quangos cave. This is an amazing, but you cannot explain this by geological erosional. They're trying to explain by erosion of the river. The water never leave this type of perfect ceilings.
Oh wow.
This is the Tajos cave from also the expedition of 76,
Wow.
and this is the gallery now called Gallery Stanley Hall, and it's the bigger with cathedral ceilings, and it's called Tajos by the existence of these birds with the shape of doves who are blind, but they navigate with ecosonar inside of the caves.
Is that you in the center of the gallery? That's a huge room.
Yes, no, that the photo gave the impression of they were giants but the person is more close to the camera, giving that impression with his shadow. No, it's not myself. Yeah.
Okay, well, it's a big room.
Yes, yeah, they were illuminated with some spotlights in the two chambers there to the right.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
upside down.
I am side, but this is myself when I'm back from my fourth or third expedition, displaying some artifacts I found in the caves and also gifts from friends who were also researchers in the Andes. Yeah. This is the bridge over the Quangos cave. Uh, Unfortunately, I used the most difficult way to get to the caves using the land way. And now all these TV journalists, TV anchors, they go through the river. They don't have any problems. When I went in the worst political time and the worst kind of hostile times, but I persevered. After 6 months in the jungle, I conquered the Tajos caves. I was the first after the expedition of Armstrong in '76. I was the first gringo to come to the area and to record in digital video the inside of the cave. And was to get to that bridge, I have to cross 3 bridges. Most of the bridges are destroyed. I was surprised I get this bridge intact, and I was kind of abandoned by my TV crew. I was abandoned my old guide who was in the expedition of 76, Hall Armstrong.
Did you, on that bridge, did you jump up and down, or you were scared to fall?
No, 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 no. I'm not scared of the altitudes, and the river is very rapid. I also I was trying to find another access, and a friend of mine recently found another access through the river. or he's a good diver, and he entered through the cave through one of the holes in the river. But that is, I don't recommend. The rapids swallow you very fast. And also, if you use canoes and use kayak and vessels, river boats, the chance you will flip in the different rapids is big. But if you see the recent programs they did, another guy, Josh Gates, who copied my story, is supposed to go with him for the program Expedition Unknown. He did all from air and from a river, and the river doesn't have too many custodians. In the past, the Access River had people who didn't let you pass, no? Mostly Aborígenes. Yeah. And this is a part of my expedition in Brazil when I was following the steps of Percy Fawcett. I spent several years trying to see, well, maybe I will find his bones finally, but and as nobody find it in so many expeditions since 1924, 25, now it's going to be 100 years close.
Mm-hmm.
The mystery, if he was really killed by the Indians or he was swallowed by one of the rivers. No? And that was part of one monolith I found. I never couldn't decode what is the inscription said.
And Alex, you make place a lot of importance on the cornerstone. There's, I don't know if we have the.
Oh yeah, that is my favorite thing. That is, in one of my expeditions, my friends and custodians, they said, no, we have to leave the cave. But they were starting to feel we are going to be ambushed by the local Indians. What happened? And was you could read all the details in the book, all the story, what happened after. But I said, I'm not going to leave the cave until I found the cornerstone. But the cornerstone proved the structures are artificial. You don't find the nature doing true cornerstone to sustain a 500 tons megalith who divided two caves. The big cave you were seeing before, the one you asked me, that is holding the two parts access to the cave. If that means the ancient carvers, the only way to make communication between the first side where that polishing tunnel and the second gallery was drilling. And for drill, you have to hold the ceiling of the cave with titanic forces and to use cornerstone to sustain that. That is the principle of architecture. Modern architecture or prehistoric or proto-historic architecture. And that was, for me, was in evidence. But my friend Julio, who was the original explorer, Julio Goyen Aguado, never saw that stone. But Morix looks like he took it in the expedition of 69, no? Well, it was the black and white pictures you saw before.
And the first.
And I tell you another story, interesting, synchronistically speak. When the expedition of 69 was the original group with Janos Morix, an international crew and his lawyer, and Morix said what it was the full moon said. And that was the same day Armstrong, Collins, and Aldrin were around the moon and descending. And he said, as a prophecy, and Morix was a very strange Hungarian, very weird Hungarian. He said, in few years, the same people, some of the people who are walking on the moon, they will come to the Tajos. He said to one of the guides, and that was true. 7 years later, Neil will be landed in the Tajos. It's amazing. You cannot explain this kind of random prophecy.
But and Alex, with the some of the photos that Austin put on the screen tonight, with the there's seems like they're perfectly flat ceilings.
Uh,
You, you know, you have
in the corner
photos in
of
your
the phone,
book
yeah.
with the
Yeah, I am below
shelving.
that monolith. Yeah, that monolith who divide the caves. For me, it's another amazing marvels of the world. That monolith. That is, I was trying to help to name the cave as marvels of the world to be protected by the UNESCO. I hope in the near future.
A second.
Well, I mean, this is some amazing information. It's the what you're saying is these cut steps
Hmm.
inside this cave
Yeah,
system. I mean,
right.
it really seems like there was something going on of I don't very unique. You don't see anything like this. There are only a few samples
No.
around the world.
Hmm.
It was really an amazing book to read about just the legends and your persistence in to reaching the caves and exploring them. And the photographs reveal there was something almost like had to be there with steps and almost like shelving. Maybe that's where the metal library was stored. You make a convincing case. I really enjoyed your book.
Oh, thank you very much. No, that steps are made of quartz. It's a quartz rock, which is not totally easy to carve. But also next to that is a small pyramid. It's very interesting that formation, no? And I call the steps. They don't go anywhere. As the Incas in the surface, they used to build these structures with steps upside down. Well, you have to walk with your head down. I couldn't explain these massive things, and you found it all these galleries below Machu Picchu with steps
Hmm.
upside down. I don't know. You have to walk challenging the law of gravity. Looks like the Poseidon adventure, the Poseidon adventure on the plateaus of the Andean plateaus, but it's looks like an upside world. I cannot. There are so many mysteries of the construction, and
Hmm.
in the last 40 years of my research, I couldn't find the clues how these rocks were cut. And they talk about legends. They send you to Goose Chase, the locals, and the theorics, but we never really see the light of the sun when we need it. Yeah. The same with the pyramids. Egypt still is a big challenge. And the only difference is we found they use machinery. They use some machines. Yeah. That is you have to believe or blow up. But there were some use of advanced machines in the Andes and advanced machines in the Nile. Yes.
Well, it's been over an hour. It's crazy how fast that went. Alex, we want to thank you so much for coming on. We're going to bring you on for part 2, obviously, because there's so many more stories you have. And obviously, Craig wants to be here too, not just typing away. He wants to be on the camera. So we
And
really
Nazca
appreciate it.
lines.
Yeah.
My pleasure. Yes, the National Alliance is coming. I
Yes.
hope.
That's
I
awesome.
hope.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. Have a good night.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Alex.
That's awesome. I got
Yeah.
to start reading some of his books.
Thank you very much to having us.
Oh, yeah. Also, Craig
Yes,
said find
again.
his books. Amazon,
Dark
Simon and Schuster.
Yes.
It's perfect.
Okay.
That was awesome. Thank you, Mark. Obviously, our booking agent for bringing him on. That's awesome.
Alex is a
There's so
great
much
guy,
more. There's so
very
much
interesting. There's this book, Mysteries of the Teos Caves.
Yeah. we're gonna bring him back on in a couple of months when Craig comes back from being sick and stuff for sure. But we'll wrap it up right now. I want to thank our sponsor, Nandy Cakes. You can find her at Nandy Cakes 407 Facebook or 407-923-2898. I don't have it on me at the moment, but I know if you're local Central Florida, she will be at the craft fair in DeLand coming up in April. I'll have that probably for the next show. But like Craig says, if you want it in Central Florida, she can deliver it to you. If you want it out of Florida, you'll get a cake ball with a fork and a spoon. It tastes good no matter what. Won't look as good, but still going to be good. You want to check us out on all social medias. Pinterest, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're all over across that. Patreon, please support us. We're working on more. I think there's like a $1 account we've been working on. So just small things help us out, grow our page.
And also, we'd like to give a shout out to JJ Beard Care. We're also on Zine Radio, also Patriot Radio. So tomorrow we'll rebroadcast on Patriot Radio. So if you missed us tonight, check us out on Patriot Radio tomorrow.
Yeah, jjbeardco.com. They're really good. They send us samples. They smell amazing. They work really well. YouTube, we finally got 100 views. So youtube.com/CBeard, Three Beards Podcast.
Hit that bell.
Yep. And then just a heads up, we will not be doing a show next Wednesday. We will be on Spiritual Alchemy Energy with Julianne. So check us out there at 10 p.m. Eastern Time and then 7 p.m. Pacific Time. So that's really it.
Yep. And we'll be back in about 18 minutes with another Ancient Aliens commentator.
Yeah, I read up on some of his books, and it's going to be really good. It's a lot about what's happening right now, so I know Chris will love this one coming up, too. So, y'all, have a good night. We'll see you in about 20 minutes. All right. I messed up. It's really hard producing.